4,000 kilometers across Norway. A trip starting in the south and going all the way to the North Cape. Over mountains, along fjords, through forests, on gravel roads less traveled, towards the midnight sun. An unpredictable camping trip connected by bicycle. I was heading northbound on a camping journey across Norway. I was standing at the southernmost point of Norway, at the lighthouse of Lindesnes. From here, I would start my bicycle trip. I was about to set out into the unknown. Clouds were rolling in, but I was not going to let the rain stop me. It was time to move, and so my journey wasn't an idea anymore. It had started with the first pedal stroke. The last few months I pored over maps, routes, and I had the general route in mind. The sign said 2,518 kilometers, but I was going to detour. I wanted to see mountains, forests, islands, the raw Norwegian nature. From Lindesnes, the first 260 kilometers I would follow the southwestern coast. At the end of this stretch waited the first major goal, the city of Stavanger. The roads were far from flat. I was constantly climbing from sea level up to 300 meters and then dropping back down again. My legs were burning, I was sweating in my rain gear, the rain was hitting my face, but the worst thing? My waterproof gloves were leaking, resulting in cold, wet fingers. Fortunately, there were enough places to shelter and to make a cup of tea. Once I stopped, the sweat would cool quickly and I needed to change into dry, warm layers. While making a steaming mug of tea to heat up my fingers, I was listening to the rain hitting on the roof, the wind blowing through the trees outside, mixed with the hissing of my gas stove. This was as much part of the trip as the cycling was. Southwest Norway is known for its unpredictable weather, and I was feeling happy when the sky broke open and the sun was hitting my face. Before I left, I gave myself a challenge. I was not going to use campgrounds. I would just camp out in nature. Even when this meant that some evenings I would have to look for a good spot, or the spot wouldn't be ideal. But in my experience, there's great spots to be found, like along the stream. My tent would be my home for the next 2 to 3 months, and pitching it feels so familiar. I've been using this tent for over 10 years and it has been on so many trips already. Setting up my tent brings back those memories, and this trip will add some new chapters. Wild camping isn't just about sleeping outdoor for me. It's about having a place to slow down, enjoy nature, reflect on the day and look ahead. I had been looking forward to this simple life outdoor. It became quickly apparent that South Norway has to offer so much different roads and trails to ride. From zigzagging roads to quiet forest trails, every turn brings something new. Hills rise after every descent and it goes up and down constantly. Some routes that look nice on paper are not for cycling, but walking the bike for short stretches also adds to the adventure. An old mountain road, once a busy highway, is now a quiet bicycle route. The asphalt is slowly taken back by nature, but it's still perfect to cycle or take a lunch break. In this case, a box of mackerel on a lompe, a Norwegian version of a potato wrap. I was burning a lot of calories, so I was looking for high protein food with a lot of energy. I was trying to avoid the busy roads whenever I could. It was safer, quieter, and I felt more in touch with nature. The climbs of the last few days had been tough for my legs, but I slowly felt my body adapting. I was no longer waking up with heavy legs, and my confidence in this trip was growing. I discovered South Norway not just through distance, but also through its variety. The region is known for farming, but there is much more to see. I was riding along coastlines with sheltered bays. Sheep were moving freely through the landscape. There were green views everywhere, and former railway tracks were turned into bicycle paths. A slow, steady journey through changing scenery. Slowly, the coast was guiding me towards the city of Stavanger. The weather kept changing constantly, multiple times a day. Sunny moments were interrupted by rain and wind, but the weather was not stopping me, because I was almost at my first goal. Stavanger and the famous Fjord, 3 bronze swords driven into the rocks. They commemorate the Battle of Fjord in the year 872, when Norway was gathered under one crown and defeated 2 other kings. To the north of me lay Bergen, but before I was going there, I was making a detour to one of Norway's greatest landmarks, Preikestolen. I had to travel in the direction I came from and to take an extra ferry, but I was almost certain it would be worth it. Ferries connect places where bridges are not an option. The payment system scans for the car license plates, so pedestrians and cyclists are in luck and travel for free. The crossings give me a short moment of rest, a pulse on the water while still moving forward. After crossing the fjord, I parked my bicycle at the start of a trail that climbs steeply up to 604 meters. It brings me to one of the most iconic viewpoints of Norway, a place I always wanted to visit, and arriving by bicycle makes it extra special. Here waits a granite cliff, looking like a preacher's chair, overseeing the Fjord. This is Preikestolen. More than 300,000 people visit this place each year, but I hiked up in the evening to avoid the crowds, and I'm impressed by the view. The fjord stretching below, the sheer drop, it's impressive. I'm so glad that I hiked up with the place nearly empty. The next morning I was so glad that I went up the day before. When I opened my tent, I could see mist covering the landscape, and soon it would turn to rain. I was happy. I made the right choice to hike Preikestolen the evening before. The grey skies couldn't bother me because I had a memory of a spectacular view. However, the rain did change the rhythm of the cycling. It's harder to stop spontaneously. If I wanted to break, I had to look for shelter, so often I would ride longer. After days of rain, grey skies and damp roads, the sun finally breaks through. The route is relatively flat and the riding is easy. And I slip into my rhythm of cycling and camping, the Norwegian landscape bright and inviting around me. One evening, after setting up my tent, it was time for my first real bike maintenance. I had to change my brake pads, because downhill with my heavy bicycle had become dangerous with my brakes not working properly, especially with all the sharp turns and the wet roads. The last few days there have been too many moments where I was squeezing the brakes to the maximum and not slowing down fast enough. I brought spare brake pads with me, and maybe I should have done it earlier, even before the trip, because these were still the old brake pads from my previous big tour. But the change is rather easy. Take out the pin that holds the old brake pad and put a new one in place. I reached the point from where I would start island hopping. The next 300 kilometers towards Bergen, I will take ferries and bridges to connect the islands. A lot of the ferries go every hour, but here and there are a few that don't connect that well. So there I will have to plan my days around them. If there were only a few ferries a day, I would make sure I was there in time. For all the other ferries, I would just figure out when the next one would go when I got there. My progress wasn't that fast with all the waiting, but I was feeling okay with that. Although not that different, every island gave me a sense that I went to a new place. One of these islands is Umbu. The highlight, a rock named Umbumannen. Not exactly a famous destination, but since I was already here, I thought, why not? I was really enjoying the sight of all the wooden houses everywhere. Traditionally, the houses along the coast are white, whereas in central Norway, towards the mountains, red or dark brown buildings are also common. It's definitely not a strict rule, since I came across enough brown and red houses here as well, but it would be nice to see those changes along the way. Not all the islands are connected by ferries. Some are linked with tall hanging bridges stretching the narrow straits. Strong winds could make it difficult and dangerous to cross the bridges, but the last few days had been calm. It had been good riding weather. I was riding with anticipation. Bergen was coming up and I couldn't wait to park the bicycle for a few days. I was looking forward to give my legs some rest, explore the city, walk around as a tourist, eat some fish and see the 7 surrounding mountains. After quiet islands, passing farms, cycling close to the sea, the landscape started to change. The roads were widening, there's more traffic lights, bicycle paths everywhere. I was entering the city through a 2,900 meter long tunnel, smooth and quiet compared to the busy streets above. After a nice break, the moment had come to head towards the Hardangervidda mountain plateau. After following the Hardanger Fjord, I would start climbing up to 1200 meters above sea level, and I was hoping that my legs would be ready for the real elevation. I couldn't really see the mountains yet, but I knew they were coming. Norway's rivers and waterfalls never seem to stop. There's endless water rushing down with force, and it makes sense that the country produces so much hydropower. The flows feel restless, in a hurry to reach the sea, and riding along them, I feel the same way, impatience pushing forward. But where the water runs down and loses its strength, I'm heading up, eager to climb higher. There they are, the first mountains of the Hardangervidda in the distance. Even the lower peaks are still covered in snow, much more than I expected. The snowy peaks make me wonder if my route will be open, whether I can actually cycle there. I will have to figure that out when I get there. But for now, the mountains make a beautiful backdrop while I cycle along the fjord. In Bergen, I bought a new gas canister, so I had enough fuel for all those tea breaks. The sun was feeling warm and the smell of black tea drifted up. Part of me was eager to push forward to those snow-covered peaks, but I tried to remind myself that I was not in a rush. Here the road follows the fjord, hugging the steep walls. It's raw and beautiful, and I imagine how difficult it must have been to build these roads back in time. After raw cliffs, the contrast couldn't be stronger. From hard stone to a perfect calm scene. Norway keeps shifting moods, and I just try to take them all in. The Hardangervidda is with 1880 meters the longest suspension bridge in Norway. With its 200-meter high pillars, the bridge stretches over the Hardanger Fjord, 55 meters below. Not that long ago there used to be a ferry here, making the travel time much longer. And with crossing the bridge, I would leave the fjord behind. Without access to a shower, I made do with a wash in a cold river. It was definitely refreshing, but with the sun out, bearable. Slippery rocks remind me to be careful, and it's a good thing I brought sandals. The last thing I would want is to slip or cut my feet on a sharp rock while standing in a river without my clothes on. I was happy with the place I found for the night, but I was also a bit worried about the road for the next day. Before my trip I researched the National Road 7, the only road into the mountains from here. The problem was that not all tunnels are open for cyclists. I read conflicting stories that part of the old road was closed because of the condition the road was in. Apparently the road had been hit by a landslide and it had not been restored. Maybe it was not the wisest thing to try and continue, but there was simply no alternative route. But it was doable, and still better than a dark and steep tunnel. But I was wondering, if this was the condition at the first tunnel, how would the rest of the old road look like? The rest of the old road had seen better days, but I didn't have to push my bicycle over debris anymore. And it gave a sense of adventure. While cars were riding through the tunnels, I was slowly climbing through a beautiful landscape on the narrow road that seemed to be part of the mountainside. While planning the route for this trip, I made a digital map on which I would mark interesting places. From mountaintops, scenic routes, waterfalls and hiking trails to historical buildings, bakeries and breweries. And then I tried to connect all these highlights with gravel roads and bicycle routes. One of those places is the Hardangervidda, a mountain plateau, the largest of its kind in Europe. It has a year-round alpine climate, no trees that grow here because of the wind, the cold and the snow. It's a barren landscape. During winter up to 3 meters of snow can fall here. Wooden poles are set up next to the road to give a reference for the snowplows that keep the road open. Here started a part of the route that I had been looking forward to, Rallervegen. This gravel road was built more than 120 years ago as an access road to build the railroad between Bergen and Oslo, straight over the Hardangervidda. Along the route are several stations, with Finse the highest at 1222 meters. From there you can see the Hardangervidda glacier. Eventually, the road descends back to the fjord near Flam. The railway Bergen was finished in 1909, but it took until the 1970s before the access road became a bicycle path made by volunteers. The season to ride it is short, from July to September, and I was about 3 weeks too early. Everywhere around me, I could see the signs that there was still a lot of snow melting. Online, I read reports that there was a lot of snow on the road ahead of me. At Finse, I would have to hop on the train to the next station, to go around the part where there was too much snow. In the distance, I could see the Hardangervidda glacier. Breathtaking, endless ice, its white surface cut by dark ridges of rock. I has reached the stretch with the high snow. I would have to take the next train from here around it, but with the train not leaving for a few hours, I decided just to see how the snow was. And that's where I got unlucky. While walking on a snowbank, I fell through it, hitting my knee on a rock, immediately feeling the pain, resulting in a deep cut. And while bandaging it, it became clear that I would need stitches and a trip to the ER. I could not continue my trip. I had cycled 1,000 kilometers and I didn't want to give up this trip. There was so much more of Norway I wanted to see and cycle, but for now there was nothing else to do than just sit and recover. And that was not easy. I had dreamed about this trip, but luckily my knee was healing well. 3 weeks later I was back at the station where I was supposed to have taken the train to 3 weeks ago. My knee was still very sensitive and I knew I had to be careful. I would have to take care with setting up my tent because sitting on my knee and stretching and bending it was still painful. I was feeling both happy and anxious. Happy to be back at Rallervegen, to continue through this stunning landscape. But I was also anxious. I was worried about my knee. My confidence in this trip had taken a beating. I was trying to keep a positive mindset and to focus on the things around me. In the time I was away, there had been falling a lot of rain, and the snow in the mountains was melting fast, resulting in high water levels and loud rushing rivers. The last stretch of Rallervegen winds down through 21 hairpin turns. I was squeezing my brakes to the maximum on this steep descent. Cyclists are often warned to take it very slow here, and I could see why. This descent demanded focus, not speed. More than 100 years ago, these same slopes were tackled by horses and men hauling materials for building the railroads. I could only imagine the effort going up, while I was going down, slowly winding until the valley was opening up. The village of Vlam lays at the fjord. During peak season, every day a new cruise ship docks here, unloading thousands of tourists and flooding the area. I preferred the silence, and I decided not to stay long and to continue, so I started climbing again. Leaving the noise of Vlam behind me, only the sound of rain, birds, my tires and my rain gear remained. I was cycling into the rain clouds, while sheep were wandering unbothered on the road. It made me smile that those sheep didn't seem to care about me or the weather, and that gave me some extra motivation to slowly climb on, in the lowest gear I had. I knew I would have to use my lowest gear a lot in the coming weeks. Between here and Trondheim lay the Norwegian mountains, with mythical names like Jotunheimen, home of giants, Reinheimen, home of the reindeer, and Trollheimen, home of trolls. This stage would not be measured in distance, but in elevation, one mountain pass after the other. This region had to offer gravel roads with small villages in the valleys, places where history and mythology would be close connected. passing through Rallervegen, I got a glimpse into the past. I enjoyed the quiet and the peacefulness, and the history that can be seen in these old buildings. All the villages I would pass would also give me the opportunity to buy food, so almost every day I would be able to cook a meal with some fresh ingredients. So I took the opportunity in Rallervegen to buy fresh food, and after that I found a nice spot in the forest next to a river. Since I brought both my jet boil and a pot, I had the luxury to make a bit more complicated meals. I would bring potatoes to a boil and then put them aside and let them simmer. While the potatoes were slowly cooking, I would prepare the vegetables. Norway is an expensive country, but one of the things that is affordable is salmon, smoked salmon in this case. The last step is to combine it all together and add some cream cheese. A tasty meal, providing enough calories and protein for the distance and elevation. Some days there were multiple roads to choose from, and on this particular day, when I looked at the map, I noticed a historical road. Rallervegen, the King's Road, is named after King Sverre, who marched his army here in the 12th century. In the year 1843, a set of hairpin turns was constructed here to reduce the gradient from 25% to 20%. But still it was way too steep to cycle for me. Only decades after building the hairpin turns, with the invention of dynamite, a new road was blasted through the valley below. Nearby, another reminder of Norway's past stands quietly. The smell of tar drifts from the old stave church of Bergen. Built around the year 1200, the exterior timber is coated with a thick layer of tar made from pine trees. This seals it from the weather. 4 dragon heads decorate the church. It's unknown what their purpose is, but it is a clear echo of Norse mythology. I was enjoying the mix of history and the changing landscape. Down in the valleys everything felt calm and riding was easy. Higher up I felt tired after the climbs, but satisfied with the effort and the mountains as a backdrop. By the late afternoon I would start looking for a place to set up my tent. Out there in the mountains, camping life was easy and rewarding. I was only halfway up my second mountain pass and there would be still more to come. By the end of this stage I would have climbed over 20,000 meters of elevation, twice the height of Everest. In the distance I could see the peaks of Jotunheimen, a sight to behold, and I had to take a break to take in the view. The Jötnar are the giants of the Norse mythology, and they were believed to represent the forces of nature, of chaos and destruction, but also were the contributors to the balance of the world. From their peaks, a cold wind was sweeping down, biting my face and numbing my fingers, and I was riding straight into this wind. Once again, I found myself on a gravel road which I had been looking forward to. The website of the tourist information states that the road is prone to rockfall, especially during heavy rainfall, and it's not cleared or maintained by anyone. You cycle here at your own risk. And that's what I appreciate about Norway. Nature doesn't have to be turned into a perfect attraction. Part of exploring is to figure out where the limits are and to think for yourself how to deal with those risks. Clouds were slowly rolling by. This place felt isolated, but in a good way. I could just pitch my tent next to the trail and enjoy the view, and with no heavy rainstorms forecasted, I was riding on a road where cars couldn't come. The gravel crunching under my wheels, in the cool and fresh air. Every turn giving me a new mountain view. This route is called 1000 meteren, the 1000 meters, and lays high above the fjord. A mix of clouds and a long sunset painted gorgeous colors across the mountaintops. But with the clouds came rain, following days of clear weather. My legs were heavy from all the climbing, and the mountain views were now hidden behind low-hanging clouds. It was time for a small break. Luckily, there was a mountain cabin on this road, and I decided that I had earned a night indoors. I enjoyed a warm shower, washed my clothes in the sink, and spent the rest of the day writing in my journal and enjoying being indoor. In the evening, hot food was served and I swapped stories with other guests. The next day started calm and clear. The mountains felt less inhospitable, and now I could actually see the landscape around me. The storm had rolled over while I rested, and according to the forecast, the weather would only get better. I was winding my way down the mountain road and the next town came into view. I had arrived in Loom, where the beautiful stave church gives character to the town. Here the mountain river full with sediment flows into a dark, clear lake, resulting in the two mixing and creating deep, beautiful blue colors. In Norway, Allemannsretten, the right to roam, gives everyone the right to enjoy nature. You can move freely across uncultivated land and camp almost everywhere, as long as you keep a respectable distance of 150 meters from cabins and homes. This tradition, based on trust and respect, gave me the opportunity to stay away from the official campgrounds and pitch my tent in beautiful places. It's freedom that comes with responsibility. This day felt like a turning point for me. Something had changed. I don't know whether it was the views of the mountains, or maybe the good weather and being out on a gravel road, but my worries about my knee were not on my mind anymore. I didn't think about whether I could finish this trip. No, my focus was on the here and now. I was enjoying it. The road led me down out of the mountains again, back to where people live, and I tried to practice my Norwegian. And I decided not to capture these moments on camera, but to focus on the interaction. Norwegians can be quite distant in the beginning, but seeing my bike, people were often curious. They would ask me where I cycled from and what the goal of the trip was. One of the things I was often told, that I was so lucky to see so much of Norway, and that I would see so much more of the country than most Norwegians ever would. They call it Rallervegen, the troll wall, the tallest vertical rock face in Europe, about 1100 meters from its base to its highest point. I imagine a winter storm long ago, rocks breaking loose in the night, and the people below whispering that the trolls are awake. Norway is a country of tunnels, some short and others stretching deep through the mountains. This one is long and dark, but open to cyclists. Almost none of the tunnels have a separate bike lane, so I switch on every light, including the flashing one on my helmet, and just make sure that I'm seen. I was getting near another planned highlight of my trip, Norway's highest waterfall. It took some planning to include Mardalsfossen into the trip, because it is hidden away in a long valley. This waterfall was almost lost in the 1970s when the water was redirected for hydropower. Thanks to seasonal regulations, every summer from June 20th to August 20th, Mardalsfossen is restored for visitors to witness its power. At the end of the narrow valley waited another steep climb, the trade-off of visiting the epic waterfall of Mardalsfossen. Up in the mountains, the water is so clear that I drank it straight from the streams. I didn't have to filter it or boil it. It was just pure, fresh mountain water. But it was time to leave the mountains behind me for now. I was getting close to Trondheim. I had a great time with the towering peaks all around me, gravel roads running over the mountain plateaus, rushing rivers and swimming in ice-cold lakes, camping in idyllic places. I knew for certain that I would come back in the future and maybe climb some of these peaks that I passed by. Trondheim, once a Viking capital, sits where the river meets the fjord, an excellent sheltered harbour. The old wooden storehouses tell a quiet story of centuries of trade and merchants. Towering above the city is the Nidaros Cathedral, the burial place of King Olav II. Killed in battle over 1,000 years ago, he was an important figure who unified and reformed Norway. After wandering the historical streets, I set off again, crossing the fjord and continuing to head north. The journey was leading me to the coast. Here I would follow coastal road 17 to Woode. Along the way I would reach a symbolic milestone, the Arctic Circle. I had expected that the further north I would ride, the colder it would get. Instead, Norway was in a heat wave, with temperatures over 30 degrees. There were almost no clouds in the sky, and the light breeze did little to cool me down. I had been looking forward to easy flat riding along the coast. People I met along the way had warned me, and I quickly had to admit to those people that they were right. It's anything but flat. The road rolls constantly over micro-relief. In the mornings the sun was burning me out of my tent, and not long after setting off, sweat was running down my arms and legs. My routine of hot tea switched to iced tea, or at least a version of it. A bit of flavor mixed into the lukewarm water in my bottles. I would refill water whenever I could, but often it wasn't enough, so I added another bottle, 4 in total. I was missing the ice-cold streams of the mountains. This part of the coastal road was quiet. I didn't meet many people, now and then a farmer waving from his tractor or a car passing me, but otherwise it was just me, the road, and the heat. I was in the land of the midnight sun. The sun was setting close to midnight and would rise again a few hours later. This gave long-lasting, colorful sunsets because it never really got dark. The long evenings gave me time to sit and relax, to write in my journal and think about all the memories I had collected so far. Not every stop was planned. One morning I found myself beside an ancient Viking burial site. Dating back to between the year 800 and 1100, this site has never been excavated. Yet the nails found here hinted on a Viking ship from long ago. I found this place by just following some signs next to the road and deciding that I could have a little detour. Since I didn't have a schedule, I had time for stops like these. Under the endless sun, I had already gone through multiple bottles of Factor 50. Applying it several times a day was not optional. No, it was an important part of taking care of myself. When the clouds rolled in, they came as a relief. The heat faded with the cooler breeze drifting in from the fjords, and I was hoping that this would be the first hint of milder days ahead. While waiting for a ferry, I realized that I had come to my long-expected milestone. In the distance, on the water, I would be crossing the Arctic Circle. I was feeling proud of myself. I had cycled over 2,500 kilometers so far, and now I had arrived in the Arctic. Just before the city of Bodø, I was crossing a narrow strait called Saltstraumen. Rushing below me was one of the world's strongest tidal currents. The water is pushing itself here through a narrow gap of only 3 kilometers wide, resulting in strong currents and whirlpools. It was just impressive to see the power of nature. Riding the coast had once again showed me another side of Norway, completely different from what I had seen so far. It made me realize how much variation there is in the Norwegian nature. It was still early morning when I boarded the ferry that would take me to the peaks that I had been seeing in the far distance on the horizon for the last few days. From Bodø, I was crossing over to the Lofoten Islands, but before that, I would explore a remote island named Vardøy. At Lofoten, I would ride along the mountains that were rising straight out of the seas. From there, my route would continue north to Andøya, known for its seabirds, and finally to Tromsø, the gateway to the Arctic. Vardøy felt remote, with a population of around 600 people living here, far away from the mainland. I had parked my bicycle far below and climbed up to one of the peaks to get a better view of the island. Originally, I had not planned to visit Vardøy. Even more so, I'd never heard about the place. But luckily, someone gave me the tip to go there. And it was beautiful. I was happy that I went here. The combination of white beaches, blue water and towering cliffs. Magnificent. Exploring Vardøy felt like a day off. From the harbor, it's less than 10 kilometers to the end of the road on the other side of the island. And because it's such a small place, I had all day to take it slow. In the distance, I spotted an eagle on a rock. Back in time, they were almost hunted to extinction, so it was an exciting moment to see one of these birds sitting there. Over 1 million tourists visit Lofoten each year. In summer, the roads are packed with cars and camper vans, and it's not an easy place to cycle. There were many moments where I felt frustrated, even unsafe with some close calls, but I decided to focus on what drew me here, the wild beauty of this place. For now though, the views are hidden in mist, and I was waiting for the clouds to lift and reveal the peaks. Fjord was laying quiet in the misty landscape, one of Norway's oldest fishing villages. Each winter, the Arctic waters fills with migrating fish, including cod. The catch is hung on wooden racks to dry in the cold wind. Whaling once sustained many coastal villages, providing oil and food that they needed for the long winters. But that time has largely passed, leaving history where it once was a big industry. I had another reason to come to Fjord, the once-a-day bicycle ferry. This allowed me to skip a crowded tunnel, and since I didn't want to miss the ferry, I arrived early and I had the chance to explore the village before continuing on the journey. An old wooden fishing vessel served as the ferry, a slow 45-minute crossing. The salty sea air was filled with the quiet hum of the engine, mixed with the wind and the splashing of water against the wooden hull. A unique experience, far from the usual ferry crossings. The boat was manned by older fishermen, who created this route as a safe alternative to the tunnel. I had a quick chat in Norwegian with them, and I enjoyed the calm and the connection to their world. I checked the weather forecast, and it looked like the clouds might clear. High up on a mountain seemed to be the best place to be at that moment. After that majestic moment, I continued riding and looking for a place to camp. Lofoten is known for its wide beaches, and I wanted to camp on one of them. Along a quiet path, free from cars and campers, I was in luck when I found the perfect private beach for the night. My bicycle allowed me to go to places where other tourists couldn't go. I was riding quieter roads in a green landscape with new mountain peaks coming out of the sea in the distance. While shifting gears, I felt a snap, immediately knowing something was wrong. My bike dropped to the lowest gear, and no matter what I tried, I couldn't shift. Pulling over, I realized my shifter cable had broken. Something I didn't have the parts for to repair out here. Using some tie wraps, I made a temporary repair, holding it fixed in a medium gear. I hoped it would be enough to get me to the bicycle shop a few hours ahead. I arrived just before closing time, but the mechanic was busy. Yet he took a moment to look over my bike, smiled and handed me a replacement cable, free of charge, with the words, "You can do this." His kindness and words gave me the boost I needed to tackle the problem on my own. The weather on Lofoten shifted quickly. Clear one day, wrapped in clouds the next. After a night of rain, I woke to a calm, grey morning. I had reached a part of the island which was quieter, less travelled. With the sound of the wind and the sea in the distance, but without the noise of cars, I could just ride, surrounded by coastline, forest and the unseen peaks above. After months of cycling, I was craving something different. A new pace, a new challenge. That first mountain hike had sparked something in me. So when the sun was trying to break through the clouds, I knew I wanted to look for another peak to climb. However, this time the clouds didn't lift. But not every climb is rewarded with a view from the peak. Instead, I found multe, cloudberries, gold and sweet, almost like jam. They're hard to find, so many Norwegian families keep their picking spots a secret. Out on the road, I had to improvise when it came to washing my clothes. With only 2 sets of clothes to ride in, I would rinse the day's clothes in a stream whenever I could, but never with soap. For a better wash, I used a small soap bar or a dissolvable soap sheet, a dry bag and a bit of water. Seal it up and let the ride become the washing cycle. A few hours later, I found a public toilet, a chance to rinse out my soapy clothes. It was obvious by the color of the water that this washing wasn't for nothing, and I kept rinsing it until the water was clear. It might have looked a bit funny, my bike transformed into a laundry rack, but on an adventure, practicality wins over the looks. The rest of the day, the sun and wind would dry my clothes, while I was off to the next beautiful stop. After hiking to the impressive view from Lindesnes, I pitched my tent for the night close to where I needed to be the next day. This island is called Andøya, Duck Island, so I had to go bird watching. I had booked a trip on a small fishing boat that would take me around a small rocky island in front of the coast, a place where thousands of seabirds were breeding during the summer. Every summer, Lindesnes, better known as puffins, come to this small island. Adorable birds with bright orange beaks that look like small flying penguins. Lifelong partners return to the same nest every year. From their nest, the puffins dive quickly into the sea, to depths up to 60 meters to hunt. With their colorful beaks full of small fish, they return to their nest, trying to avoid attacks from eagles. This colony is home to more than 80,000 pairs of puffins. After raising their chicks, they return to sea for the rest of the year. I was nearing my last checkpoint. The city of Tromsø lay behind a series of mountain passes. The road was climbing steadily, giving me time to think on what this stage had brought me. I experienced so much more than just cycling. I was appreciating that there were buttons installed at the tunnels to warn cars approaching from both sides that they were not the only ones in the tunnel. Every time a new view awaited me on the other side of the tunnel. Even the weather could be different. There were moments where it was sunny on one side of the tunnel and cloudy on the other. I had started to wonder when I would see my first reindeer, for which the north is so famous. But just before Tromsø, one walked slowly on the bicycle path, without a care in the world. I was hoping that I would see more reindeer soon, but first it was time to explore the city. Tromsø, built on an island in the fjord, framed with the mountains as a background. Known as the gateway to the Arctic, it was from here that many of Norway's polar expeditions started. There was a lot to see and do in the town, but I needed a pause more than I needed new experiences, and I felt the journey pulling me onwards. Soon I found myself on the road once more. Only 560 kilometers remained. Nordkapp, the North Cape, was within reach. After months on the road, across mountains, through valleys and along fjords, that was where the journey would end. 4,000 kilometers from where it began. I had mixed feelings about being so close to the point where the continent and the road ends. Part of me wanted to reach that finish line, but the other part wanted to slow down and take in the far north while still could. I didn't know if I would ever be back here. Meanwhile, I was keeping an eye out for reindeer. Everyone said that I would see many of them up here, but so far I had only seen one. Instead of reindeer, I found something else. An endless carpet of blueberries. Impossible to resist. After pitching my tent, I wandered into the field of blueberries. This too is part of Allemansretten, the right to roam. The same freedom that allows you to camp in nature also lets you pick wildflowers, mushrooms and berries. The sweet taste of the blueberries, the calm light, the sound of birds, I was feeling part of nature. I woke up to a quiet morning, the sun already high up in the sky. With the rest of the blueberries I picked yesterday, I made a luxurious breakfast, even a blueberry tea. I was in no rush that morning. I was just enjoying the sound of the wind through the birch trees and the warmth of the sunlight. My tent was wet with dew, giving me another reason to stay a little longer. I took my time, eating, drying, packing, and enjoying this peaceful moment. While packing up my tent, I noticed the purple stains of blueberries, a reminder to this camp spot that would likely never be washed off my ground sheet. Down in the valley, the weather was clear. But as I climbed higher, the road disappeared into a thick mist. The visibility was low and I was glad there was no traffic on this road. The cars were hundreds of meters below me, driving through a tunnel. I could only imagine how stunning the view must have been on a clear day. But there was also something special about being up in the clouds here. And then, out of nowhere, a reindeer. Soon after, a small herd followed, crossing the road. At last, I was truly in the land of the reindeer. Beyond them, an even larger herd spread out across the hillside. There are two kinds in Norway, the wild mountain reindeer and the semi-domesticated herds of the Sapmi people. Though not all Sapmi people herd reindeer, the animal remains an important symbol of their culture. A local woman told me that whales had been spotted in the last few days, and I was in luck. Barely visible on the horizon, I saw them, surfacing, breeding and disappearing again. This is also where salmons fill the rivers, heading to their spawning grounds. A small luxury I packed was bags of loose tea and a tea egg. Wherever I stopped, by a beach, a mountain stream, or the side of the road, there was a moment for tea. And when I ran out, it became an excuse to buy a new flavor in the next town. Cloudberry, smoky campfire. While that last one was perfect, since no campfires are allowed in summer, yet the tea was just as comforting. This journey kept surprising me. According to my map, maybe an outdated one, there was supposed to be a road here, or at least there used to be. A landslide had taken it straight into the fjord. With a new road built for cars, this one was left to nature. A reminder on how powerful nature can be. Fortunately, a narrow path led around the collapse, sparing me a long detour. The road towards Noordkap consisted out of two highways, the E6 and the E69. Not pleasant to cycle, but there are simply no other roads. They would lead to my last obstacle, Noordkaptunnelen, a long, cold tunnel deep under sea level. I was riding through Finnmark, the Lindesnes county. This is the least populated area of Norway, and nature felt outstretched and open. In Finnmark, the weather seemed to shape every moment. There isn't much that stops the wind. The landscape is characterized by wide open plains, with occasional low trees here and there. And although it was still summer, I got a pretty good understanding on how harsh the climate is here. Riding through this landscape gave me time to reflect on my journey. From the southern tip of Norway to the far north, nearly 4,000 kilometers later, I was close to the very north, where the road and the continent would soon end. I had climbed through mist and sunlight, crossed mountain passes and fjords, ridden along coastlines and through quiet forests. I'd stood in the spray of Norway's highest waterfall, looked down from the tops at Lofoten, and camped among thousands of blueberries. Norway had showed me its power and its beauty. The sound of waterfalls crashing onto rocks, the silence in the mountains, crystal clear lakes and deep blue seas. Wildlife often appeared when I expected it the least. Reindeers, otters, puffins, dolphins, even whales in the far distance. Now close to the end, I felt strong, but also ready for rest. This trip had given me so much, and still I knew there were many places waiting for me to return to. And those reindeer I was afraid I would miss? Well, there's no way around them for sure. Noordkaptunnelen, the last challenge of my trip, goes 200 meters down, deep under the ice-cold sea, with a 10% descent. I had to put on extra layers to make sure I would stay warm while riding down the tunnel at high speed in the cold. Within no time, I had ridden the 3.5 kilometers down to the halfway point. I stripped off the extra layers for the steep 10% climb back up to sea level. Despite the cold, it didn't take long before I was sweating and a cloud of steam was drifting around me. And there I was, on the last kilometers of this trip. The road was filled with campers, buses and cars, passing me with high speed without any effort, while I was battling the wind and the rain. But that didn't matter, because I had reached the top of Norway. I was at Noordkap. I had hoped to reach this spot on a nice sunny day, late at night with the midnight sun and no crowds of tourists. But there I was, surrounded with thousands of tourists from a cruise ship, in a wet, grey and cold world. But I made it. I was at the North Cape. And this trip was not about reaching this point. It was about what I came across all along the way. This was my trip through Norway.